oh man, I'm going to get myself in trouble. But like, I mean, I love science.
Yeah.
It's not just a margin of error. It's an actual like big change that you can see in terms of their performance. Or I'm a science guy. I love physiology. I love biology. I love the physics of movement. I love all of it. I love anatomy, believe it or not. I think that the direction that science has taken lately has gotten to the point where it's like, show me a study. So like nothing can be experiential. Nothing can come from the application of the science. Now it has to come from the study that proves that happened.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, and what's up, guys? We're back with another episode of Table Talk. This is a remote episode with ATHLEAN-X, Jeff Cavaliere. I came out to help with one of your events. What's the name of this event?
ATHLEAN-X Live.
ATHLEAN-X Live.
Yep.
Which I want to thank you for bringing me out. It was a good time.
I appreciate you.
Different demographic than I'm used to working with, but it was fun. It was good. I liked it. I want to start with your background, but I don't want to go too deep into that because it's kind of easy to find. So you have a master's degree in physical therapy. What prompted that?
Actually, inspiration from my sister. My father's a medical doctor, and I always sort of had the idea that I wanted to be in sort of some healthcare to be able to serve people. But I went down the pre-med path. Went to UConn, went through all the pre-med courses, and got up to the point where I took the MCAT and walked out midway through the MCAT and called my sister and said, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. Like, I don't know. I think I'm bombing this test right now. And she said, well, that's what happens when you don't study. I thought I could just walk in and take it. So I wound up going out and finishing the test and not doing badly on it. I'm probably doing okay, but realizing like, why am I pursuing this? Because it's because my dad did this. Mm-hmm. She was a physical therapist, and she was at UConn where I went 1 year ahead of me. And I said, I like what she's doing, and I could take it in a different direction. I don't have to stay like in orthopedic outpatient. I could actually maybe work with athletes. And if I had gone down the medical route, I was going to do orthopedic surgery or something. And I just saw that as too long of a path to get to where I wanted to actually start being with people and working with people. So I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to just go do PT. I applied and I got in, and I started 7 days after I graduated. I had to go right back into summer school and start the whole path towards physical therapy.
So what started your interest in fitness, though? That had to start sooner.
Worked out, oh man, more inspiration. My brother had worked out, and he's bought all the magazines. He bought all the the latest equipment, and I couldn't be any less interested. I hated training, hated it. And I started playing sports in high school. I was always a little bit athletically, naturally gifted. And so I just played football because that was what I wanted to do for physicality. And I competed the first year, did well. I got named, I got in the honor of actually suiting up for varsity. But I went and I attended a practice. I got knocked on my ass so bad by one of the seniors, like it was proving a point. And I realized I gotta do something. Like I can't just show up anymore. Mm-hmm. It becomes more serious. And because I thought I might have had a chance to actually play well, I had to do something. So my father bought me one of those old Omni fitness machines, like just a seated bench press with a lat pull down on it, leg extension. And
most people get the cement plates.
yeah. I got that because he thought that was going to convince me to actually start doing something. And it sat there unused for months and months and months and months, and I never used it. And finally, it was Thanksgiving Day. That was the culmination of that freshman year. Get a chance to suit up. And we played our crosstown rival, and we beat them in a big upset. They were perennial state champions, and we were not that. And we beat them, and I was so pumped up about that, just to be participating in it, in the environment, on the sidelines. Came home, Dave, I never looked back. Like I started working out because I knew I had to do it, and the bug bit me once I started to see some results from actually training. And I never wanted to not train anymore. And it became part of my lifestyle where I started to eat right, started to see better results because I was eating right finally. Got consistent for the first time with it, saw better results because of that. So all these feedback mechanisms I had in place that were making me feel even more sure about this decision kept me on that path and moving towards fitness. And of course, just being athletic and liking athletics, when I decided to do PT, I knew that I could work with people who are athletes. I could work with.
Did the training become a bigger passion than what the sport was?
Yeah, because it was aesthetically probably serving a separate goal for me. Mm-hmm. I was pretty skinny. Didn't get much girl attention back then in high school. I think we're all motivated at some point by like looking better, getting the abs. So
did it help?
It did. It did. I was one of the only guys that had abs, and kind of, I was always lean, so I had, more of that ripped muscle look, and if I had a tank top on, but those are the stages that we go through. But I always did, though, have an appreciation for beyond the aesthetics. I knew that ultimately, what's the goal of this? And knowing that I could perform better in whatever sport I did if I dedicated more time to the training aspect and preparation of it, it gave me more of a purpose than just that. So it became less about the look and more about feeling better and moving better.
How did that change when you were in college?
So in college, when I decided, I think educationally, when I started to do all that medical curriculum, you become just more knowledgeable about the body, and in all different ways. And all of it always fascinated me. Like that, biology always fascinated me. I hate mathematics, hate history, but biology was something that I really took to. And so the fascination with how the body worked, and I remember taking a course in endocrinology, and it was like a curriculum requirement, but man, I loved it. I loved how the interplay of hormones and how they fed off of each other. Like, to me, the body is one of the most fascinating things in the world. Like, how does it work? Who set this thing up, this machine up, So I was so into that the training part became more intricate too. Like, I started to care more about how you move when you're training, what adaptations you can make to an exercise to make it tweak, slightly differently and feel it slightly differently. Became very much like a scientist of my own movement. And that was sort of a natural precursor then when I learned about physical therapy, where you're learning about muscles and joints and tendons, and when they get injured, like, how does that all affect your training? So it really started to feed it more. Like, and it feed it in a way that I think would ultimately lead to where I am now, where I wanted to do more of this side of it, So just increased in interest with a little bit more science behind it.
So then after you got your degree, what did you do then? So
after I graduated, I actually wanted to start like a training program for golf, because I loved golf. I played golf my whole life, and I was a big believer in fitness for golf, because that was when things were starting to move, like TPI and the Titleist, before, that wasn't even in existence then. And I was like, God, people who play golf really do just show up to the course a lot of times. Yeah. They don't stretch, they don't do anything. They'll take the club, they'll put it around behind their back and do this a couple times and they'll go. Like, it requires you get into some pretty unique positions and have some good flexibility in your shoulders and your hips. And I felt like, this is something that could benefit from actually physically preparing for it. And I wanted to go in that direction. So I actually approached a friend of mine who was a golf pro at a local course. We set up a little program, and I started to do that. And then I went and I worked in orthopedic outpatient physical therapy, knowing that was never going to be my destiny. Like, I went there and took a part-time job from day one so that I can leave 2 days free to do the other stuff I wanted to do. And
so how was that? Because most of the people there don't want to be there.
In terms of working with the patients?
Yes. Because I've been there, just for my own, because you have to check off 3 of them, and I just watch what the other people are doing, and they're screaming and crying and bitching and complaining and stuff. I wonder what it's like to be on the other side of that.
Frustrating. One of the things I always used to joke people with is, like, I'd see people We'd rehab whatever the injury might be. They go home, and you see them 6 months later, right? They come back, same thing. He said, well, what happened? You were doing good. Well, that's exactly it. I was doing great, so I stopped doing the exercises. It's like, that was what was making you feel great.
Mm-hmm.
Realize, right? Like it wasn't just supposed to end when you got discharged. It's supposed to continue.
Yeah.
And to me, whether you're injured or you're feeling great, I mean, physical therapy is just, you can take it in whatever direction you want. You can work with people on the very low level of that spectrum where they're just injured right out of post-operative
mm-hmm.
care, right? Or you can be at the high level where you're transitioning right back to the field again, if you're even at the highest level of pro sports. I always wanted the other side of it because I still like to be able to do things in the performance element.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I don't think I'm a very good physical therapist post-operative. I don't have much experience there at all. It never interested me that much. I could tell you the protocols and I could tell you what to do, but that never was as fulfilling to me as getting back into doing something, performance, get back to what you used to do.
How did that lead into being with the Mets?
So, interestingly, again, I've always been a grinder. I've always been a little bit of a worker, which contrasting with my childhood when I didn't want to do shit. I was a very lazy kid. I was a third of three. I didn't want to do too much work around the house. Used to frustrate my grandfather a lot, who I lived with. But I found a work ethic at the right time, and I just would do anything I could to put myself in a better position. And the guy who ran the clinic that I worked at, he hosted a group athletic like for youth baseball players, 12 years, 12U and AAU. And so he would run a conditioning course for them a few nights a week, strength and conditioning, but mostly conditioning. And my job was, as a helper, was to drive up there, which was about 35, 40 minutes away after work, go set the whole course up, take them through the course, break it all down, come home. And I did that for $20. So, it's probably round trip 3 or 4 hours. But one night when I was there, I just thought I was gaining experience and I was okay with that. And one night when I was there, I heard someone in the cages hitting away. They had like a batting cage in the facility. And only I would recognize him because he was not like a starting baseball player, but he was a bench player for the New York Mets. And his name was Mark Johnson, who I loved, just one of my good friends. And he came up to me and says, do you do what you're doing for them for like individuals? And of course, I'm like, I was the biggest Met fan in the world. Mm-hmm. Nobody was a bigger Met fan. I would have, if they lost a game, I would be miserable until 7 o'clock the next night because I needed a chance to just get back to feeling better about it again. And this is like game 7 of a 162 game schedule. So he was there. I was like, holy shit, yeah, I'll do it for you. No problem. So I started training him, and I trained with him that whole season. And he wound up becoming one of the best pitch hitters in baseball that year, coming off the bench. And of course, he was happy about that. And he invited me down to go meet their strength coach, who at the time was Barry Hayden, who had been with the Mets for a while. And then he was just leaving the Mets to go start his own business. And that was a little bit of a bummer because I was a little bit interested in kind of being with the Mets, and now he's kind of leaving that world. And I started working with him, and we're training different people. And, we were in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is kind of this wealthy area where everybody, seeks out. They want to get with the former Mets coach and all that stuff like that. So they're training. He was training some pretty important people, but he wanted to train the athletes that he was working with all season, and he wound up introducing me, like giving me the clients that he didn't necessarily want to train, and I wanted to train with the players. I actually embarrassed myself so badly one day training the players because I was so nervous about finally getting the chance to work with them that I was demonstrating a ladder drill, and I wanted to just take them through some quick footwork, and then I did some jumping through the ladder, and I was like, just jump 2 squares, and I got a little eager, and I jumped 3 squares, and I hit my foot on the 3rd rung, and they were the rolling ladders. Straight out, fell flat on my back. He goes, you want me to do that? That's what the guy said to me. I was like, no, not quite that. But I wound up, kind of getting more of the non-athletes, not because of that performance, but just because this is who he wanted to work with. And that guy that I wound up training was actually a close friend of the owner of the New York Mets. And I wound up training him and doing a really good job with him. And he said, we became friends, and he invited me to a party one night. And he says, come on the party. And he said, I want to introduce you to somebody. This is the owner of the New York Mets, Jeff Wilpon at the time. And I said, hey, nice to meet you. He goes, you know what? He goes, Barry talks so much about you. And he said that you're a physical therapist, right? I said, yeah. He goes, our physical therapist just left for the Texas Rangers. He goes, to become a strength coach. He said, would you have any interest at all? I was like, sign me up, And that's how it started. I got invited to a mini camp and went down to mini camp, had to kind of like audition. It happened like 2 weeks after that conversation. And then I played the waiting game. I had to wait until about 3 days before spring training. I got the call and I was told that I was going to be hired.
How long were you there?
3 seasons. 2006, 7, and 8.
And what were some of the takeaways from being there? Because you went in sort of green.
I went in very green.
Yeah.
The typical path to Major League Baseball is not my path. And I'm incredibly fortunate for that opportunity that I got. The first thing that I got was a cure for my fandom, because that went away instantly. And it was the healthiest thing that ever happened to me, because I probably would have had a stroke if I was continuing to just watch games as a fan. I learned right off the bat that these guys are, yes, being paid for what they do, but they're trying really hard. And I know a lot of us, as on the other side of the TV, go, this guy's a bum, he's not trying, this guy sucks. They're men just like us, and they're trying their best to perform every time they get an opportunity, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. And even the best hitters fail 7 times out of 10, and it just doesn't work out. And becoming, personally friendly with them and knowing what their passion was for what they do, just never did I care anymore about the wins and losses as much as the effort that they put forth and making sure that I could show up for them every single day and give them the best I could. So that was huge for me, because honestly, literally in my now post-Mets life, I can watch any game and not get have my heart rate up to over 100, beats a minute or whatever. So it's I found that to be number one. Number two, there is such a thing as a gifted person, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it quite often in every realm of athleticism. There are gifted athletes, and they are naturally gifted, and things just could become easy to them. And even when I would train some of these guys or work with some of them, I could ask them to do something novel that they've never done before, and I know they never did it before. And it looked a hell of a lot different than the average guy you asked to do it. Right? Just mechanically, they move different. It's just easier. They're more coordinated. They pick things up easier and faster. I actually enjoyed that part of it, because I felt like I could keep throwing things at them, which challenged me to continue to raise the challenge. So it taught me how to continue to raise the challenge. Not that I don't like to work with people who struggle with things to get them through the struggle, but for me, it made me have to be faster on my feet to keep learning new things, because they can master your shit really quick. And when they did, then what? And you had to keep pushing them. So I think that was interesting. And then also, just another revelation for me was despite the fact that these guys are athletes, despite the fact that they're getting paid millions of dollars, they still have aesthetic goals. And I would try to steer the conversation towards performance all the time. But ultimately, there's still an appeal, just as guys who want to look good, towards aesthetic goals. And I never thought that would be the case, because you've seen a lot of athletes that don't look the greatest. But so a proper training program that trains athletes, as we were talking about this before, you certainly could develop an aesthetic physique by training athletically, right? You're training explosively, you're training with weights, you're getting stronger, you're building muscle, right? All this serves you. So my biggest job was probably trying to convince people that it's okay, you're still going to look good, but we really got to focus on, first and foremost, your performance, because that's ultimately what got them their paycheck. They could look amazing, they could lift up their shirt and have a six-pack, but they're batting a 091, they're going to be on the bench and ultimately out of a job.
Do the majority of them actually want to train?
We had a good group. And a lot of it was because when I joined the team, the head strength coach was Rick Slate, he's a super successful strength coach. He's gone from Florida State to the New York Mets, or actually Florida Marlins, won a championship, New York Mets, and now he's with the Vegas Raiders. So he's actually been able to go back to football. He got them locked and loaded, man. Like he got them. There is a system in place, not overwhelming. I think that's part of the reason why the adoption was so high. It wasn't overwhelming. He wanted 3 quality workouts per week. Show up, don't care if you're on the road. He went in the shower a few times and pulled them out of the shower. Let's go. Time to do it.
Well, I was going to ask, how's that work when you have so many games?
It's hard. There's a
lot of balance.
It's hard. I mean, we know that the priority is what they do on the field, but we also know that if we allow them to miss their maintenance workouts and their work during the season, it's going to continue to deteriorate. Performance will deteriorate over the year. You can't just work yourself up to get ready for the season and then allow it to all go away. We would try to have them continue to sort of at least keep the loads heavier so that we can kind of maintain their strength, but cut way down on volume. I mean, baseball is a volume sport. It's not even just the 2.5-hour games or 3-hour games, but it's all the time in the cage beforehand. Like the tons and tons of swings that they take beforehand. And then, getting on a plane to go to the next city at 1:30 in the morning, and then getting up at 7 and going and playing a game for a day game or even earlier than that. It's a recovery-based sport. So the job was never to just trash them in the weight room. But because we respected the player that way, and I think this is really important, you need to respect what it is that the player is going to be making their living doing, and not trying to put your own agenda in place and saying, but I want them to be the strongest guys, and I want them to be the. You respect them, they respect you, and we would just get those solid workouts each week, those 3 times per week. They give it to you more than you think, and they liked it because they know they felt better doing it. And by not trashing them in those workouts with whatever, like I said, whatever goals you might have for them that are not necessary, they respected your judgment, and they adopted the program. And when they adopted the program, they were in.
What were some of the reoccurring issues that you had to deal with or contend with as a physical therapist?
So it depends on, a lot of the guys, the position players, you're looking at knee issues, abdominal issues in terms of strains from swinging, all the rotation. Pitchers are obviously elbows, shoulders. If they got to the point where they blow their elbow out, then they become IR candidates, and then they're off and getting surgery, or they're down in rehab in the minor leagues. But the maintenance stuff, the maintenance work was very much arm related. But normal quad strains, hamstring strains. We went through a little bit of a streak there for a while. We actually did pretty well for our team, but the league was definitely going through a streak. And I can tell you, my role as the assistant strength coach to Rick, the first time anything is muscle related, they point right.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. We owned that. We owned all the muscle. It doesn't matter what it was. It could be the guy was up drinking all night the night before, completely blasted, totally dehydrated, day game the next day. But if you had a hamstring strain, they're pointing at you. So we own those injuries. But as a PT, also, I kind of own some of the shoulder elbow stuff too, because that's where we sort of drew the line. The shoulder elbow stuff was for the athletic trainers, for the pitchers. And then the lower body stuff was pretty much.
So how do you manage that? Because I'm just thinking of overuse.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can train it, but do you want to train it because it's already overused to begin with?
Yeah.
So how do you manage that?
It was, like I said, very low volume. Workouts were 20 minutes, 25 minutes oftentimes. So guys either worked out after the game or they worked out before the game quite early in the day. I'd say the guys that were most serious about training did it when they arrived at the park, so 2 o'clock or whatever. They were better at managing fatigue and better at managing volumes, and they were kind of locked in. And I'd say we'd keep it pretty simple to push pull legs. If we can get the leg workout in, that was the most important for us, honestly, because we found that guys' legs got the weakest throughout the season. And what happened is if they skipped 2 or 3 leg workouts along the way, like in succession. When they went back to train legs, they were sore, and then they didn't want to play. They didn't want to do it again because it was impacting their play. So we had to be very consistent with the leg training. But again, we bear squat them. Like we're not going to back squat them with heavy weight there. We bear squat them. We do step ups. We do lunges, heavier dumbbell lunges, right? Like anything we could to try to like pick variations of the exercises that could, in and of itself, be a little bit less demanding, even neurologically.
Yeah, so the systemic fatigue you're trying to manage.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And at the same time, just still tax them enough to get a benefit from their strength maintenance. And then as far as upper body work, we would cut back on that even a little bit more because they get a lot of upper body work in terms of overuse from all the swing, all the bat work. So, yeah, I mean, we pushed the pedal where we could, and we pumped the gas more often than not.
So where did you move on to after that?
So after the Mets, I actually soon after started ATHLEAN-X.
And what inspired that? Because you started that 14 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, how long ago? Was that a long time ago?
That was 2009.
Yeah. So before influencers were influencers.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there aren't many left from back then. I feel old sometimes when I think about the guys that were around back then. There's not many left. I always knew that the internet was a place that could do phenomenal things for somebody who had a message to share, because it could reach so many more people than I could in a neighborhood location, like in a gym or something nearby, where I'm constrained by the number of times.
Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? Things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Merrick Health. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Merrick Health offers a table talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over-the-counter and prescription. Visit merrickhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Merrick Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being. Summer's here and so is the heat. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym, it kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link.
Hours I have in a day, or the number of people that can see me or book an appointment. So that always appealed to me. but YouTube wasn't really necessarily the vehicle I was thinking. You know, I just thought, what could I do? Could I set up a website and I could share, you know, tutorials or blogs or write stuff? But ultimately, someone I knew who was using YouTube, they said, dude, you got to do YouTube. You have to do YouTube. So I started with baseball videos over there. And when I put up my first few videos, I mean, you know, we got some baseball audience involved, but I felt like I was a little bit tired of just baseball. I heard the national anthem more times than any other song in my life. And, you know, being able to take what I thought I knew as a physical therapist and just overall in terms of helping people to feel and move better, it didn't have to be limited to just the skill of baseball. So I made a few videos on there and quickly decided, like, I don't want to limit myself to just that. So I decided, what could I do to create a brand? I wanted to create a brand.
So was there a strategy at that time?
It became a strategy then. Yeah, it became a strategy then where I wanted to create a brand. I didn't just want to be Jeff Cavaliere. It turned into basically, sometimes people use this interchangeably. When I meet people, like, oh, there's Mr. ATHLEAN-X, there's ATHLEAN-X. Like, they call me that as opposed to my name. But I ultimately thought that one day when I'm old and rickety and I can't move anymore, Jeff Cavaliere, the trainer, may not be able to do the things he once was. So having a brand would probably be a wiser option. And coming up with that name was just sort of blending the concepts of being athletic and lean. You know, being able to not be the biggest guy in the gym, not be the strongest guy in the gym, but be able to do a lot of things well. And in the process, give people an opportunity who weren't necessarily athletic the feeling of being able to think, maybe I can be more athletic than I am right now, or who weren't necessarily into lifting or excited about lifting might become interested because they see something that they hadn't seen before, they want to try, right? Like, just get people curious about it. And so I started to make different videos. And though my first series was an ab series, you know, like a progression of like 10 weeks of training and all that, for which I just told somebody earlier today at this event that I wore my shirt for the whole thing. And the reason why I did was because I was modest, believe it or not, and a little embarrassed. And I thought, I'm going to have to show up in front of a general manager again. I'm going to have to walk into a team and see the owner. I don't want to go, who's this guy again that you're bringing in here? And then they Google it and they see this guy with his shirt off and doing all. So I was very self-conscious about that. And a friend of mine said to me, he's like, dude, I know, but if you've got it, you should show it. And it makes it easier for people to see because you're like an anatomy chart. People will be able to see what you're talking about. And I think I was able to buy that concept a little bit because I was like, you know, I think that is actually true. If you can see it working, I even preach that. I tell guys, if you're training sometimes, you know, if you're in a place where you can actually take your shirt off and look at what you're doing, you're going to get better results because you can actually engage more with the muscle you're training. Of course, I was just training at home, so I wasn't that ashamed to do it there, but to put it on video, like that was tough. And the views went way up. And I was kind of convinced that, well, that's the way people are going to wind up paying more attention. But I tried to pivot quickly into a way that I could make it educational. And I started drawing on myself, and I started to do other things to engage the audience and make them understand that, like, you know, this is looking rather aesthetic, but deep down inside, my main goal here is to get you feeling better at the same time that you all want to look better. Kind of going back to what I said with the athletes, with that aesthetic. Everybody wants that somewhat aesthetic component to it. You never get devoid of that. But how can I give them other benefits wrapping it up?
So how did you choose the topics back then?
In the beginning, it was easy because I had so much I wanted to talk about. You know, I think we would basically start to strategize and say, hey, look, let's get a physiotherapy-based concept out there. Like, how do you fix a low back problem? How do you fix a rotator cuff issue? And then go after the things that are more aesthetic-based. How do you get bigger biceps? Which happened to be one of my better areas that I had developed. So I was like, I went to the places that were in my wheelhouse, and I tried to share information that I don't think was like just like do a curl. Like, I tried to talk about why the exercise worked a certain way, incorporate the anatomy of what we were doing. I didn't care, honestly, whether or not it was like some will perceive it as talking over people. I didn't think it ever was. I thought I always tried to keep it down to earth because we all want to know more about how our body works. And I think that I was maybe one of the earlier guys to get into that, to like, don't talk down to anybody about this. Like they'll elevate their understanding of the topic if they're interested in it. And so by delivering the information with the muscle markers and with all the what some would call advanced terminology or fancy words, I mean, external rotation or whatever, like I never thought that was fancy. I thought that was what people wanted to know. And I just made content that I loved. I made content about things I really wanted to talk about and share.
Was there one that just clicked from this, that did very well? Because YouTube in those days wasn't what it is now.
Very different.
So you're not thinking of virality, you're not thinking of any of that kind of stuff. But was there a video that where you're like, oh wow, this reaches more people than I thought it could?
Yeah, I think it was one of the earliest bicep videos that I did, and I did a workout, and it was a form tweak video. I just told them about how to hold the dumbbell in your hand, right?
Yeah, that's funny. No, what cracks me up, because I had Johnny Shreve on, and we were talking after the podcast about different topics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he came to the conclusion that things like that do very well. And I'm like, what do you mean, like holding the dumbbell? He's like, you don't understand. Yeah. Most people don't know.
Yeah.
That where to grip a bar and where to do it. It's, stuff that we kind of all grow up with, that it's just like a given that you know that. And he's like, no, people don't know that.
I think that like when people can explore different ways to do exercises they've already done or experience it in a different way, it becomes an aha moment. Like, holy shit, I never tried it that way, and oh my god, I did that and I felt it so much more. I like that. I like to have to put my money where my mouth is and let you try it and see if it works for you better. And that was always sort of the foundation of how we did things. So if I did the curl by, like what I was basically saying in that video was, if you held the dumbbell with an offset grip, that the dumbbell's gonna basically, if you held it towards the end of the dumbbell's gonna fall this way. You can overload supination in addition to flexion of the elbow. So it's like, okay, that's cool. People try it and they like it. Like, I feel that so much better. I just think that people love to learn about themselves, right? And no matter what area it is, they like to test themselves. They like to take IQ quizzes, right, online, fill in their email to get their result, because they like to learn about themselves.
Are you a sociopath?
Right. I think I failed that. But yeah, if you can go and you can do these types of things, you're going to wind up learning some piece of information about you that you either could tell somebody else that will find interesting, or you just are going to incorporate the next time you train and feel like you've learned something. I really think that was the cornerstone behind the growth of ATHLEAN-X, because I was trying to make people aware of a capacity that they probably weren't sure that they actually had, or just take a different appreciation for something beyond just the aesthetic, whether it be the science of how you move, the science of how what your body is ultimately capable of, because you're selling yourself short. Or talk about something like overtraining, right? Like we talked about some of the controversial topics too. And some of my greatest friends, CT Fletcher was like, at that time very much preaching like overtraining is bullshit, and I was kind of saying, well, there is a limit. There's a limit physiologically. So, we addressed a lot of different topics, but as the years went on, I've covered a lot. So. I've had to readdress topics and go back and revisit. But every time we do that, I think one of the struggles we always have is like, I always want to bring a little something different. Like, I don't want to just go make the same exact video I made. I want to bring a little something different. Obviously, we've learned over the years, right? Hopefully we've learned new things. And I want to deliver content that continues to adapt to what we know. So I think you're always going to be able to make a lot of videos that you've potentially covered before, but I think it's the responsibility to try to continue to bring some new stuff too.
Yeah. There's some topics I want to go over, because one thing that I've noticed over the years is when you're dealing with, predominantly I'm around more strength athletes than anything else, and they're serious about what they do, training hard becomes an interesting thing to define, because somebody's training hard is based upon the hardest they've ever trained, which may not be that hard to somebody else, you know. So, but the reoccurring thing that I keep seeing is they're locked in with their training, but they're ultimately living a Gen Pop lifestyle, right? So when it comes to systemic fatigue and recovery and stuff like that, they're missing the boat. Meanwhile, thinking that they're hardcore and doing everything, they're all in and doing everything that they need to do. And when you look at, you know, a lot of the content that you put out, you're addressing certain topics such as, you know, sleep hygiene, systemic fatigue, all these things, they play into that more so than what a strength athlete would believe it plays into. Ultimately, they find out, you know, as years go by, that it matters, because you can get away with a lot when you're younger, but those habits are easier to build when at that time period when they really don't need it. Like you can get away with not sleeping when you're 20 and still grow, but it's still a habit to be able to develop. So when we look at, we'll just go with sleep hygiene, you know, one of the things that you covered, which was interesting, is, you know, everybody's heard about, you know, blackout curtains and, you know, chili pad sleep mattresses and all these type of things, but the position that you sleep in is very seldomly talked about. Where go into that a little bit.
I mean, think about how long you're in these positions. Like you're in positions during sleep that you're for many times longer than you're in the position during waking hours. Because if you're in the position of waking hours, you shift your body, you stand up, you're feeling stiff. Though you might move a little bit in bed, you're still pretty static. And some positions are more aggravating than others, depending upon what your issues ultimately become. I talk about, you know, first and foremost, like, you know, neck height and positioning on pillows is dramatically impacted by, you know, the pillow you choose. I actually was dealing with this myself recently. You think I know better, but like I had a pillow that I was using that was a little bit too high, and I woke up consistently with bad neck for weeks. This is me still, not like for weeks. Finally, I'm telling my wife about it. She's like, "When are you just going to get another pillow? Like you use a different pillow?" And like that was the obvious answer, but it's critical. The day I switched my pillow out, I woke up the next day without neck pain. And I haven't had neck pain in the last 3 weeks since I made the pillow change. Now, I didn't really need that information to convince myself that that was true, but like, we do weird things, you know, with sleep. We like to sleep on our stomach, is what some people, you know, like, stomach sleeping is a bad idea. There's not a lot that goes right orthopedically with stomach sleeping, in my opinion. You put too much strain in your low back. Your elbows, your arms are usually up under your head, internally rotated. Like, they're just, now having had shoulder issues, like where I actually have a labrum tear and rotator cuff issue, if I put my arms up over here and I fall asleep, if I wake up, it literally will take me like 2 minutes to move my arm down, because I have to go real slow because it hurts every single inch of the way. That's for someone that has a problem. But it's also not a great position if you don't have a problem, because of how long you spend in these positions and how chronically you assume these sleeping positions because you just happen to like them. So I think it's important to be aware of how you sleep in the positions you do. There's a lot of people that wake up and they always say, "I think I did something when I slept." Right? How many times do people say that? You likely did. You likely did. You likely slept on your arm for too long, or you likely just have a sleeping posture that's not helping your body right now. And addressing that and making changes to that, even though it's breaking habits and how you like to be, is one of the easiest ways to feel better every morning and to also wake up more rested. Because I can guarantee you, even if you don't wake up, if you are shifting because you're uncomfortable, it's gonna disturb your sleep.
Would you say that sleeping on your back is probably the best way to sleep?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think you can, you can probably get away with being a side sleeper if you're in the right position in terms of the pillow height again, and being conscious of how your legs are positioned in terms of like whether you're pulling them all the way up or whether you kind of have them straight down. But I think that the best position would be a proper height pillow on your back, kind of like corpse pose.
Yeah, well, one thing I find interesting is I'll have people that will go on a CPAP, right? And then they'll say it completely changed everything and their body feels amazing. And I wonder, is it because you can't sleep on your stomach? And it's also awful kind of hard to sleep on your side if you got a mask on your face. So you're kind of forced, to be on your back. So they're giving credit. Granted, the CPAP helps because they're not choking, dying all night long. But I think it also helps because it's forcing them to actually be on their back that whole time.
I think it's a very good point. I think it's probably very much likely to be right. I mean,
well, it's funny because a lot of them will say, I can't sleep on my back. I have to sleep on my stomach. I have to sleep on my side. Then they get a CPAP and they're forced to sleep on their back. And it's interesting to me.
I think people are very resistant to changing sleeping positions. Like we have the positions we like and we think that, but again, if you're willing to try changing your position, you're likely going to amaze yourself at how much better you can feel. And again, I think if you wake up, if you get an adequate amount of sleep, 7 hours, 8 hours, if you get an adequate amount of sleep and you're waking up stiff, unless you did like a hard training session the day before and you could expect that soreness, if you're waking up stiff every day, then there's something wrong with your sleeping position. There's something wrong. Like, because again, it's just this constant posture that you're not varying very much throughout the night. And 7 hours is a long time to be in some position. I mean, you go take a flight that's 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours long. Everybody wakes up there, gets out of the seat, they're stiff. You're gonna get stiff. But if you are in a better sleeping position, you're gonna wake up and you'll knock that out of your body within 5 seconds of standing up. But if you're still limping around, 10 minutes after you woke up, 20 minutes after you woke up, you really should address your sleeping posture and think about changing it. Because it's having way more, and again, beyond how you feel, what's the quality of sleep? Because what's the recovery? Is that going to impact your training and everything else? They're likely yes. It's funny that you brought that up before about like the gem pop life and what that's one of the issues I think a lot of times gets in the way of some good data from some studies, because you could have a population of college students that are participating in a study, but like the control of what they do in their regular life afterwards, especially if the studies are conducted on collegiate, like how much are you controlling that nighttime lifestyle and that recovery and what they're drinking and what they're not? And it's like, that is so impactful on what actually ultimately happens in the gym. It's not just a margin of error. It's an actual like big change that you can see in terms of their performance.
Yeah. How do you see the science-based training and how it's evolved over the past decade?
Oh man, I'm gonna get myself in trouble, but I love science.
Yeah.
I said that before. I'm a science guy. I love physiology. I love biology. I love the physics of movement. I love all of it. I love anatomy, believe it or not. I think that the direction that science has taken lately has gotten to the point where it's like, show me a study. So like nothing can be experiential. Nothing can come from the application of the science. Now it has to come from the study that proves that happened. And that's not where we're supposed to go with this, because if you look hard enough, sometimes you don't have to look very hard. You can find a study that says exactly the opposite of what this other study proved to be true. And it happens a lot. So relying on the studies to look, what have you experienced? Like, training to failure is good, training to failure is not good. Using the stretch position of an exercise is now exclusively good, or we might be leaning towards it being exclusively good for what? Like, again, as a physical therapist, I'm not ready to throw out full range of motion for the benefits it provides. As a strength coach, I'm sure you're not ready to throw out full range of motion in terms of the benefits it provides the individual. I think we get a little bit too hung up on the fads of science, and unfortunately, I think there are some out there who are trying to build their names off of the fads of science that actually detracts from what the real point of it is. If you talk to any real scientist, if you talk to like Brad Schoenfeld about this, the answers he gives? The answers are always like, studies indicate possibly it might be, things are, the available data suggests possibly it might be, but we also have data that concludes that this is possible too. Like he's not dogmatically falling in love with one thing and saying this is it and this is now how we're going to train. And even if you're willing to change your opinion about things, which is reflective of being a scientist, you change your opinion as they come out. Changing your opinion every couple weeks about topics that seem like they should be set in stone sometimes doesn't come across as genuine to me. I feel like.
Well, I wonder where it's going because, the science for a period of time was all the eccentric part. Is the more hypertrophic part. Now it's the stretch position. Right. So I'm wondering, in 5 years, is it going to be the concentric position?
It probably will be.
And
it probably will be, which is why all of it matters. My big thing is that the language of muscles is tension, and your job, if this is hypertrophy we're talking about, if you're trying to grow a muscle, your job is to become fluent in tension. And there's tension in a lot of different places in a range of motion. There's tension in the contracted position. There's tension during the eccentric. There's tension in the stretch position. What's unique about the stretch position, in my opinion, is that stretching in of itself is a form of tension. When you take something to the limit, it's tension. If you took a band and you stretch it out, there's tension. If you apply load on top of that, load is a form of tension. So if you put load on top of the stretch position, you've got like two stimuli for tension there. If you're in the contracted position, you're shortened. There's not the type of tension that's existing in longer lengths. You apply load there, though, it's still tension. I mean, go hold yourself up over a chin-up bar and see how long you can do a flexed arm hang. Like, there's tension there. If there was no tension, you could probably stay there for a long time. There's tension. You fatigue. You wind up not being able to hold that. The eccentrics, why I think they're so helpful and beneficial, is that it was the elongation of that muscle through the eccentric that created a little bit more damage in the process. Like it's the unlinking of those cross bridges that would cause a little bit more of damage than the shortening of the muscle. So I've always sort of been a big proponent of eccentric tension and protracting how long you're in the eccentric portion of a lift. Like always lower it slow. Don't just drop it. Try to fight it. I think what you're seeing with stretch is it's the terminal range of an eccentric movement, right? When you're going through, let's say even a curl, you're elongating. You're taking that muscle through an elongation process. When you get to the point where your elbow is fully extended, your arm is back behind your body, now you're in that terminal range of that process. All of that along the way is beneficial. And even when you think about things like a lot of the research that talks about that lengthened position and just doing partial repetitions and not doing the rest of the repetitions, I mean, there are so many layers to that have not been uncovered and definitely have not been studied yet.
Well, I was going to say with that is it being studied on every muscle group, or are we just assuming that the studies with the bicep are going to apply to lats and everything else?
True. And beyond that, it's like, okay, let's look at partial repetitions. Is it that they're being performed as partial repetitions, or is it that they're being performed usually out of necessity because you can no longer perform a concentric repetition, which indicates that you're already going to failure, and you're performing some additional half range of motion repetitions or quarter range of motion repetitions because that's all you can generate. But what are they doing? They're taking you to and through failure to a level of effort and intensity that might be supplying that stimulus for growth. And even if you said, no, I'm just going to do partial repetitions from the beginning to the end, great. But you're still performing them because you don't have to perform a full repetition for a longer period of time to and through failure. So is it really the stimulus of the stretch and tension, which I just said is a viable thought process because there's two forms of tension there, or is it just that you're training harder, you're training with higher effort level and higher intensity? They have to. There's. I'm not saying that that's not possible. They have to, there's so much more work to do. I'll ask you try to build your biceps. I'm going to give you one exercise. Are you doing the face away stretch cable curl to build them, or are you doing a heavy barbell curl?
Depends on the day, but probably the heavy barbell curl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying for the rest of your life.
Oh, for the rest of my life?
Big biceps, what's the one that you're going to wind up doing?
A barbell curl.
Yeah, I mean, you can't discredit the value of just overload, because like the tension that you could deliver to the muscle just through weight and overload is also a driver of hypertrophy. And starting to choose exercises that are based solely on stretch would actually cause you to throw out some exercises that don't do such a great job at stretch that have immense benefits to creating bigger muscles. So that's, I think, the part that you have to stop yourself and say, look, it's as always going to be some blend of all of this.
Well, the failure thing is something that's always intrigued me.
Yeah.
Because there's, I can take any exercise and do it at a slower tempo, right? So the failure, first off, is hard to define, right? If you're talking RPE or whatever it's going to be, because am I allowed to be psyched up? Am I not allowed to be psyched up? What mental state can I be in? Because if we're going to do two RIR and I'm just normally training compared to if I actually hype myself up, there can be a vast difference between that. So does that mean that I'm not getting the hypertrophy if I'm not psyched up, because there could be more there?
Right. Yeah.
And if I do that, then there's going to be more neural fatigue because of the mental stimulus that's going into that repetition.
Yeah.
I like to use the example of, if somebody's doing a barbell squat and they're just at level 5 arousal, compared to 10, with ammonia caps. One's going to be way more systemic, even if it's the same weight, one's going to be way more systemic fatigue because there's going to be more force output through that. To where, if you're dealing with just hypertrophy, say an older athlete, they may be better off using a slower tempo, because the load's going to be reduced, which is going to be less joint stress. But some would argue that there's not going to be enough, hypertrophy, whatever you want to call it, because the load's lower and the force output isn't the same, but failure is still there. There's still 2 RIR or whatever that's going to be based upon that. So tempo can change that there, or holding a contracted position for more time, which, some are saying now that position doesn't even matter.
I know.
And I'm like,
or that time under tension doesn't matter.
Like, well, if it doesn't matter, then why, if I do that, why do I fatigue faster?
Right.
If it doesn't matter. So all these things kind of get confusing to people. For strength athletes, if they're doing the hypertrophy work at the bottom end of their training, I would prefer to find a way they can use lower load to still get the hypertrophy, because they don't need the systemic fatigue or the joint accumulation damage or from side raises with 80 pounds when they can use 30 pounds. I feel they can get a greater effect, but people will push back on that and say, well, not really, because there's no progressive overload. I'm like, but if
there is, though.
Yeah.
There is, because the tempo being slowed is a form of progressive overload. Progressive overload. As I said before, the language muscle speak is tension. Like, how you deliver tension, if you're slowing down the rate that you're lowering that weight, like that the perceived stimulus is higher. It's harder for you to do that. That's a form of overload. Like, that's a form of stress that the muscle has not undergone. So I think people, again, they get a little bit one-dimensional in terms of how they look at a lot of these things, and it's probably the biggest frustration for those that you talk about where the direction of science-based and evidence-based lifting is like, I think frustration is common because of these things that we're talking about, like. You say it works and you say it doesn't work, or you say it works and then you say it didn't work and then you said it worked again. Like, there's a lot of contradiction, and a lot of people will argue pretty forcefully for one way or another. And so the end user who's trying to parse his way through all this information just gets kind of left saying, I don't know what the hell to do anymore. When in reality, I think that if you consistently show up and do something, and you consistently try to elicit high effort and challenge yourself, all kinds of great results await you on the other side of that. And it's getting less wrapped up in some of the specifics of that and more, don't major in the minors, like figure out a way to show up and continue to make yourself strong, or show up inconsistently, figure out ways to make your muscles do things that they don't really want to do that day. That leads to the best results for the 99% of the population. If you're talking about an elite level strength athlete, if you're talking about an elite level athlete, if you're talking about a bodybuilder, their goals might be a little bit different. They might have to approach it a little bit differently, but for the vast majority of people, if they took that approach, they do great.
Now, I've heard some people explain a difference between, let's say, strength hypertrophy and muscle hypertrophy, right? And the only difference between these two would be intent, where the strength hypertrophy would be, to use as much acceleration and force as you possibly can, where with the muscle hypertrophy would be, you don't need to have that explosive force for that. So that would kind of go back to what I was saying with a strength athlete doing low bottom exercises on their training day, using lighter weight, getting full range of motion, peak contraction, because that's really just for muscle hypertrophy, where some people will push back against that and say, no, those should still all be explosive and with as much force as possible. And I don't really know if that's worth the negative impacts that could happen from that just due to the systemic fatigue, because the main movements are the things that need to grow, where on the bodybuilding side, some will say, well, you don't need to have that big force output, you just need the volume, to be able to build that. Then that circles back to, well, the volume only needs to be X amount per week, which gets convoluted a little bit because work capacity can increase. So if the optimal number of sets for a bicep is 8 per week, I don't know what it is, what's that based off of? It's because somebody could potentially slowly over a period of time build up to 100 sets of biceps per week.
I can speak from experience here, and this is kind of a crazy thing, but like I don't know, if I did a split muscle training and I was doing a bicep workout, I could do 14 sets for biceps and do drop sets on every single set and feel great. And recently, due to changes at home and the boys go to bed late, and I train when everybody's in bed. So, the workouts get later and later and later, and they tend to get shorter and shorter because I don't want to be, up all night. My capacity for what I used to do gradually declined more and more and more and more. So it doesn't just, you don't only have the ability to just increase that capacity, but you can easily lose it too. And my expectations for what I could perform at are based off of a history of doing a certain type of workout. And when I go try to do that same workout now, after I'd say it's only been about 8 months to a year of like this change in schedule, I couldn't even handle the work capacity that I did before. But I'm the same person, and it's been fluctuating up and down. Now I could build back up to that work capacity again if I do that. But I was left with like sore joints, sore muscles, like, even inflammation I felt like in my elbows. It's pretty, we are very dynamic people, and individuals, and that number gets changed a lot. And, a lot of times we have a tendency to kind of compare ourselves to previous versions of ourselves and the history of what we had. And we keep that in context as the context for everything. That'd be a mistake. And I think that increasing, like, your approach to training should never necessarily be so one-dimensional that you're preventing yourself from growing in other ways. Like the slowed down repetition speed, that's beneficial in even bigger ways than hypertrophy. Like, that's beneficial in joint health. That's beneficial for people who have existing joint issues. I say all the time, if you can slow down a movement, you can discern between structure and stability issues. Meaning, if you have a bad shoulder, this shoulder has a torn labrum and a rotator cuff. If you take an exercise like a dumbbell bench press and you apply speed to that movement and you don't have good stability in there because of the injured structures, that's going to be way harder and way more taxing on you than if you slow it down. And you can handle you can't handle the exact same load oftentimes unless you're going to cut your repetitions way down because of the speed. But if you were to say, I want to handle the same load, right, and I'll deal with the fewer repetitions that I get, the slow speed allows you to monitor what's happening, like, you know, degree by degree as you lower down, and you make these small changes and adaptations, and it feels good. And as you go down, if you realize that you don't have pain when you go slow, it's less of a structural problem contributing to the pain, and more of an instability issue that's contributing to the pain. And the instability is basically in the form of, hey, this area is compromised, but my body has ways of getting around that and working through that. And as long as I know that I've got control of the weight, the body allows it to push back up in a synchronized way that prevents any of the inefficient mechanics from taking over that cause pain. So structure and stability, you can still have a structural problem in the shoulder, but be able to perform exercises that you never thought you could because you slow it down and you provide that stability through the slow cadence. Just, you know, being explosive is momentum driven, and we're not always in control of momentum. You know, momentum, as they always say, is not a muscle. You know, You got to be in control of what you're doing, and when you're in control, you'll find a lot of those orthopedic aches and pains go away.
Well, staying on the work capacity topic, there's over the years, there's been the effective rep thing that's kind of come through as well, which becomes interesting to me as well, because how do, you know, I don't know what the cyclists are called, that sprint cyclists, you know, how do they have huge quads? You know, if the effective, that's way over the number of effective reps, you know what I'm saying? It would counter all that. But with that effective rep conversation, it's kind of discounting all the reps that lead up to that, which over a period of time is going to build work capacity, which the work capacity is the ultimate driver and what's going to be able to help you to recover from the training. Because if you peeled everything off and all you did was the effective reps, and then you start training for something, you know, slowly over a period of time, I can see the work capacity decreasing because of that, but yet the effective reps are where they're supposed to be. And again, that effective rep thing falls back onto what mental state, you know, is that in there as well? And if it's 2 reps shy of failure is the effective reps, and wouldn't every power lifter that does heavy triples be jacked? Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Merrick Health. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Merrick Health offers a table talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over the counter and prescription. Visit merrickhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Merrick Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being. Summer's here and so is the heat. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym, it kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link.
Right.
But they're not. So there's something that's happening before those effective reps that are creating, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
I get it.
Yeah.
I love effective rep. We did a whole cycle of workouts about them. They're a great way to tap into the repetitions that are likely more able to contribute to hypertrophy, because the effort is high enough, the stimulus is high enough to do that. And then by performing them again quickly without full recovery, you're going to tap you're going to tap into those repetitions more quickly again without having to do the buildup. But I don't think that you could exclusively train with effective repetitions as your main method and not experience some type of work capacity decrease. Because again, you're not performing a volume high enough to allow you to do that. And I think there is a benefit to having that higher work capacity too. So it's remember, you got to balance not just hypertrophy, but the other elements of the big picture.
Yeah. So what would be the benefits of having the work capacity?
Well, I think, like you said, whenever you're asked to go do something that might actually be just, let's say, functionally higher volume than what you're doing right now, you're going to go, you're going to take a trip to Disney World, and you got to walk around the park a few times, and you can't even make it because all you've been doing is effective rep for leg training. You have no muscle endurance at all, right? Like when you have to do different things just for performance, and you can't do it well, I think your training has become too one-dimensional. And again, I have nothing against hypertrophy training. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. But I think having a higher work capacity will make everything you do easier ultimately. And as you said, you don't have to do it with high loads either all the time. As a matter of fact, it doesn't work with high loads. It only works with lower loads. I use this extreme example I always use this one, and she probably wants to kill me every time I do, but my wife, who is a barber for 20 years, she'd cut 40 people's hair in a day. Like, she's one of the most popular barbers in the area. She cut 40, sometimes even 50 people's hair. She was working from morning until night. And she had these giant traps for a little girl, and most of it was because she was in this, she was a short person, so she's had her arms raised all day cutting. That's just an example of having extremely high volumes with extremely low loads. A pair of scissors weighs like 5 ounces or 8 ounces or whatever, But the capacity that she could do that, she could have worked another 10 hours that day and still been able to do it. She didn't go home with neck ache. She didn't go home with any problems. She didn't orthopedically suffer from being able to do that. How is that? That was because she built the work capacity up to do something as, in our world, light as a pair of scissors, unimpressive, but the capacity was there to do that. And others, if you or I decide we're going to start cutting hair today, and we went and stood behind a chair, I don't know how we'd feel after 5 haircuts.
Yeah.
Our feet would ache a little bit, our bodies would start to feel stiff. So I think increasing work capacity is something that we all should strive to do, and not just from a conditioning standpoint, but from a muscular standpoint. Having higher work capacity is going to serve us. And, not to mention when you add those other benefits, like I said, orthopedically to it, there's another benefit to it. So becoming more well-rounded with your approach, rather than saying, I always have to accelerate this weight, I always have to focus on the same approach to strength training. You might wind up being the best at what you do, but if you're not competing and you're going to do something else, is it great to just be great in one area, or is it better to be, more well-rounded in multiple areas?
well, you brought it up, so I'm going to go there because you mentioned the word functional, right? So the functional fitness thing, I think we've kind of come out of that terminology, but that's another one like the science-based where what does that mean, right? Because it's functional to what, you know, so how would you define that?
Well, you know, defining it the way it used to be defined was, you know, being able to balance a lot, you know, and do
A movement, functional movement screen.
And I take shit for that sometimes for you know, for showing certain exercises that we did, you know, balancing on a Bosu ball or something like that. You're you know, doing a side lateral raise on a Bosu ball. Like, that's not what functional fitness is. But at the time, that was an important transition period. I think functional fitness went a little bit overboard there. But it was an important transition period to get people to start to care at least about the broader spectrum beyond the weight room. What are you going to have to do beyond, you know, beyond the lift, beyond just having the good looking chest and arms and stuff? What do you need to do beyond that? And now I think it's gotten to a point, I think functional fitness now, people don't usually use those terms, but it's really based around more of an interest in longevity. I kind of think functional fitness is almost starting to morph into longevity, meaning I just want to be able to do things and do them for the rest of my life at a high level. I have kids, you know, 8-year-old kids at 49 years old. I want to be able to like play with them and do what they want to do for a long period of time. To me, that's functional. I want to be able to easily get up and down off of a trampoline, you know, and be able to go for long walks. And I play on a swing set with my kids, and I have to like duck down and crawl through it because it's made for their height, but not for me. And, you know, there's a couple times where I'm like, God damn, I'm stiff just trying to cross this bridge, right? Like, what's functional to me is to be able to do that and feel great and not have my joints ache and feel like I could climb up that wall that they climb, go to the jump places that we go to and climb up the rope. One time my son got stuck on the top of one of those like little ramps. I had to climb up the rope to go get him. That was functional fitness, because I bet you there were a lot of dads there that couldn't do that. And their kid would have been crying up there, you know, wondering how he's going to get down. So I think it's like functional has become more, just more healthy living. You know, I want to be healthy, and I want to have a broad spectrum of capabilities that allow me to do what I want to do and not be. I want to go to Disney World and be able to walk around and not get tired. And I think that's the right direction for functional fitness. Yeah,
I think it can still be defined specifically, you know, for a sport. So if I was to use powerlifting as an example, there's aspects to that to where powerlifting is basically a sport of trying to shorten the range of motion on 3 main lifts to be as strong as you can possibly be, right? And that has its application, and that's a sport. But it also creates an environment to where if for some reason you have to go an inch or a half inch beyond what that range of motion is, you are not able to take the tension that happens from that, thus a pec tear. And so for a lot of the lifters, I'll let them know that at the end of the training day, you know, with the accessory work, you know, take the tricep through a full range of motion, because most of what they do is a partial range of motion. The bench press is essentially it's a partial range of motion for the tricep. So it would, or, you know, so if they added in cable flies or dumbbell flies just to get the pec through a range of motion that they're normally not in, I believe they'll be more resilient in case something was to happen, you know, to where a barbell tilts one way too far on the way down and boom, there goes the pec. So that will play into, you know, a lot of lifters will have elbow issues. And it's like, well, you know, maybe if you did some kind of cross-body tricep extension to actually put that through a full range of motion, you can build more tolerance through there. So that's, to me, that would be functional for that sport, to where I could go as far as to say, you know, just walking or doing some degree of cardiovascular fitness to be able to allow your body to recover and shuttle nutrients is going to be way better for your recovery than 500 steps per day and never getting off the couch because you don't want to screw up your squat workout. You know, so, and I think those things are being more broadcast today than they were before, but I still think they're kind of missing the boat on a lot of those things, because those end ranges of motion are typically every sport's going to have limitations based upon what that is. And, would you agree that training in those end ranges of motion intelligently, I mean, we're not talking about 80-pound dumbbell flies, but even things like loaded stretching and things like that, just to build that tolerance.
Yeah, applying it to not the everyman, but in a sport-specific context, whether it be strength sports or whether it be baseball, or football. The injuries happen when you exceed your ability to handle the stresses, and sometimes it's like we had one of our speakers at our event that was talking about trying to, like the ACL. The ACL will give because you couldn't decelerate fast enough to stop the anterior, the tibia from moving anteriorly, and it winds up just popping. You exceed the capacity of the ACL. It doesn't, your resilience to that doesn't come from training within the comfort zone of what the ACL can comfortably handle, right? Mm-hmm. It has to be able to be stretched, but in a controlled way in order to expand the limits of what that might be. And I love your idea of what you're saying there for the training and realizing that there are limitations to the types of lifts that they're performing and getting good at, but it's not really taking the joint through or the muscle through its full capacity. I think the same thing when it comes to athletics. Like, we would do exercises that would look sport specific, but that's because that's the direction they're going to move. I'd have infielders side lunge a lot more than a typical person. They're side lunging constantly to field the ground ball. They're having to get deep into a squat because they have to field the ground ball. If you just squat them, you're never really stretching the limits, especially of the adductors or anything, to the point where you're actually taxing them in a way that they're going to have to undergo. Now, they're not going to have to do it really under load in baseball when they have to move left and move right. But it's still a stress that's being incurred that they have to be ready for. And if you don't do that, I don't think that you're fully preparing that athlete to best handle what's going to happen out in competition. Everything that happens, you can prepare all you want. When you get out in competition, you move differently, you explode more than you did. You talked about the adrenaline. The adrenaline factor is huge, especially in football or combat sports. So I think it's really important to train in that controlled manner where you can, to broaden those extremes a little bit and increase the limits that you're at right now. And if you don't, especially if you don't because you think you've labeled functional training goofy or anything that mimics the movements of the sport, and you've lumped it all under there. Again, there's a difference between a Bosu curl or whatever and doing a side lunge for somebody that's a lateral moving athlete. And I think that some people have lumped everything together in a way that bastardized the term functional training to a detriment, right? But I think that whether it be like once you know what your defined goal is, there's still a place for it, whether it be more longevity focused as just an everyday dad, or whether it be someone who's a performing athlete. You're still looking to broaden your capabilities so that you can do more things, incur less injuries, and perform at a higher level. And what you're saying is, you could be great at being strong, but like what happens the second you go down just 1 inch further and you tear your pec? Now you're not worth a damn. You're not competing for a long time.
No, I've seen 3 scenarios where we're dealing with these type of exercises play out. The one would be, the people that just go overboard, and that's the whole training program all the time. And then another scenario would be this would all fall into a training block. And then the other scenario would be it's kind of built in all the time, to where the question would be, if it's put into a block and it's physically put in there, how long will that capacity last? Because that's kind of the theory behind all block training is that you have, absolute training block that will carry over for X number of weeks, or explosive block will carry over for that week. When you're speaking about this, can it be done in a block which would then carry over for another 8 weeks, or does it have to be something that should be in there all the time?
I think it should be there all the time. I do. I mean, if you have a goal, if you're an athlete, you're performing, and you're a strength athlete with a certain goal. I think that should be in there all the time. I actually work corrective exercises into what we do all the time. Corrective exercises get a bad rap because they look like PT exercises. But saying all muscles matter, right? They wouldn't be there if they didn't have a purpose. And they oftentimes are the weak links, because when we're short on time, we don't want to pay any attention to corrective exercises. But their ability to amplify the big picture and the whole is enormous when you actually start to pay attention to them. And a lot of times people get introduced to them in my world through injury, and they start with the corrective exercises, but the corrective exercises become a staple of their program later on. And it doesn't have to become overwhelming and so time consuming that you hate them, you don't want to do them anymore. Pick one, pick one in a session. Do some external rotation. It looks boring, but it's important to for your rotator cuff.
What should the frequency be? Because if you're doing a corrective exercise for every joint, now it's a lot.
Yeah.
So
I'd say pick one for the day. Pick one for the day. Today I'm going out. What I generally like to say is, do a corrective exercise for rotator cuff. Do a corrective exercise the next day, or whatever, 2 days later, for your scapular muscles, because they're different. They have different functions. They have different, mostly external rotation for the rotator cuff, but the scapular muscles could be more retraction. Normalizing rotation of the scapula when you raise your arm overhead. These are all important. Hip work. We talked today a lot about people can be incredibly, I've had athletes be so strong on the sagittal plane squatting, and then you put them on their stomach, they bend their knees up, you take their foot, you either move it in or out, and you tell them to resist you, and they can hardly resist you. Their hip external and internal rotators are so weak, even if they're so sagittally plane strong. And that's huge, because you may not see it when you're doing your lift. You may not see it as you're squatting, but that lack of stability internally and externally when you're doing, especially under extremely heavy loads, tends to set the stage for a little bit of more accelerated degeneration of those joints because of what's happening inside at that small level of trying to stabilize. You're not stabilizing as well. So investing some time into working those muscles, it doesn't take a lot of time to do it either. 3 sets, 4 sets. It's just the accumulation of doing it on a regular basis. It goes a long way towards creating a better environment to do the bigger lift.
So if we stay on that topic of, it's not really that topic, but if we get into flexibility and mobility and have that in there, then where would static stretching fall as opposed to dynamic stretching or more active stretching in regards to corrective movement patterns?
Yeah. I think that it's pretty universally accepted that dynamic stretching prior to training is probably a smarter idea than static stretching, especially prolonged static stretching. Just because if you hold your static stretches for even in excess of a minute and a half, you can actually start to disrupt some of the normal joint biomechanics in the feedback that you get through that joint, to where it might feel slightly differently. And then when you go and you apply load to that, there's a thing called an engram. An engram is just a stored motor pattern, and your body stores tons of them. So like if I had to go grab this water bottle, I'm not thinking about extending my elbow, opening my fingers, grabbing the bottle. That's stored. It's done. If static stretching has the possibility of interrupting the automatic ability to do that in a small way, but in a way that makes you potentially susceptible to a little bit more injury when the loads get higher and higher. So if you could address the stretching needs with dynamic stretching, where you're not hanging out in a stretch for that long, you can get the benefits of warming up, feeling looser, preparing the muscle for that range of motion that you're going to go through, or beyond that range of motion that you're going to go through, like you just talked about, so that you're just better able to handle the stresses of the actual work that you're going to do. Static stretching done consistently at a time far removed from your training seems to be a better approach if you want to create actual length, increases, rather than trying to do them prior to training.
Well, would it be for a lot of people? Would it be to increase the length or to maintain the length that they have?
Well, that's actually interesting. Probably better said as maintaining, right? You can try if you're tight there. Your goal should, because some people are just generally tight hamstrings. Like you should be trying to increase the length. But for a lot of us who get by with the flexibility that we have, and it's adequate for what we do, then it is to maintain. And when you train and you incur high stress in the muscle, like the muscle does tend to repair shorter, right? It's trying to kind of recover in a way in which it repairs shorter. That's why I advise sort of doing your stretching, if possible, closer to bedtime when we assume those static positions like you talked about in bed, because you're about to just go lay in a position that's even maybe aggravating even more so the range of motion because you're balled up or whatever. So I think that stretching prior to bed gives you a chance to like one last time establish a better length than you're at right now, especially prior to going in a place where you're going to be rather dormant and static for the next 8 hours. So it will, if we could play for the tie there and actually keep it, we'd be doing ourselves a service, you know. But if you realize that you have deficits and you're not, and your hamstrings are just so tight, you definitely have to spend some time working on increasing that length, because that will come back to bite you in a lot of different ways, orthopedically. If you maintain muscles that are tight that you know you need to stretch out. A lot, common areas that people don't address: lat tightness. Especially, I mean, look at how I've just been sitting like this for the last hunched over, lats are, you need to worry about maintaining certain muscles. Hamstrings, lats are two of the bigger ones. Hip flexors, they need to be attended to a lot of times, and that might require a little extra work.
Now, what's your deal with face pulls? I mean, we're yelling face pulls before pictures, so let's.
I mean, they're the perfect exercise.
Well, how do you prescribe them, first off? So how would you say they should be performed?
I think a lot of people do face pulls incorrectly. To me, the main goal of the face pull is to keep your arms wide in a 90-degree position with the hands having the focus of trying to externally rotate the shoulder, go backwards. At the same time, then getting the additional help from the rhomboids, from my rear delts, from the upper traps, to pull back and get my turn it into a whole posterior chain upper back exercise. The limit of the exercise, why most people can't get into that position, is because if you do it with one rope, most of us can't do it, because the rope is only about this long, and my hands are going to be in. My shoulders become internally rotated. I just don't really like internally rotated shoulders elevated above the shoulder. I don't think that's a great position for us. I'm not saying that you're going to blow up when you put your shoulders in that position, but it's a provocative position. There are tests in physical therapy when we're testing people for impingement that they'll put you in this position here, they'll raise your arm up, and then they'll push down here, and knowing, because I have issues with my shoulders, that's not a comfortable position. So anything done at this position here that's going to internally rotate your arms, we can fix that. And we can fix it by just attaching 2 ropes or using an extremely long rope.
Sled strap. Everybody has sled straps now. Right,
and you pull back here. I think if you perform it that way, it's one of the best exercises you can do. And to me, it's more multidimensional than just a rotator cuff exercise. Because truthfully, I love that exercise too. Just straight banded external rotation will do wonders for anybody that has any type of shoulder issues, or might even strengthen the bench press. People who have a hard time engaging their back and getting the muscles in the posterior chain to engage during that exercise, because you need to be pinned down even from the top. And external rotation is going to help that. You don't. When you don't have a lot of time and you don't have the ability to do a whole ton of different exercises, to me the face pull hits a hell of a lot of them all at once, and it actually gives you good upper back development too. So for the people who are looking for hypertrophy in that area, it's one of the few exercises that's somewhat corrective in nature that can also serve as a hypertrophy exercise, because you don't need a hell of a lot of load, especially the way I'm telling you to do it, because when you get the external rotation in there, you're not entirely strong. It might limit the weight you can use, but that's okay. It's not supposed to be a heavy exercise where you're pulling really heavy weights. It's supposed to be more lightly loaded, where you're engaging the right muscles.
Where would you see some of the shortfalls in high intermediates in their training programs? Because I would say face pulls is something that's, kind of comes and goes in waves, but isn't done as frequently as what they should be, or upper back work, just put it out that way, is a big one, which the frequency can actually be high on that too. And it ends up being something that is very neglected, from that, which from the powerlifting standpoint, that's usually one of the things that's going to create the issues with them, because they won't be able to create the isometric strength to be able to hold the position of a squat, bench, or deadlift. So it isn't so much, which is interesting to me, because they all want to use heavy load to be able to do that, but don't understand that it's not really the load that's the problem. It's the ability to not hold the position, for the set that they're doing.
I mean, a friend of mine, Matt Wedding, I'm sure you've spoken with Matt, Matt's focus through his warm-ups, his running warm-ups, are really to engage the muscles that are ultimately going to be the weak links in the chain that undermine the big lift. So the focus, I think a lot of people tend to focus too much on what the big lift is and how much they're lifting, and they overlook the value of it here. I think you have to convince people of the value that they play. Once people understand the value that these smaller exercises play, again, smaller exercises, just because there's less muscles involved, they're not, they're not as compound. I still think there's some compound elements, but they're not as compound. The buy-in will be higher, but I think it's a common thing to see people skip these types of exercises, either due to a lack of time or a lack of appreciation for what it ultimately plays in the big picture. There's certainly not a rotator cuff exercise if someone is seeking simply hypertrophy is not going to be the first exercise they run to, and they'll devalue it based on that, not knowing that exercise performed consistently will set the stage to maybe press more overhead, which will more rapidly increase the size and strength on overhead press. They have to get the buy-in, knowing that this is contributing to the big picture. And a lot of times I don't think people do that.
I think on the topic of warm-ups, I believe everything should be phasic in nature, just to put that across the board. But one area I think that's vastly overlooked, and I mentioned it to the groups here today, is if they're trying to build technical proficiency in compound lifts, the squat, bench, deadlift, and you could put overhead press in there, whatever it's going to be, that in any sport that any of us have ever participated in, there's skill development. So if it's baseball or whatever it is, or wrestling, I did thousands of drop steps, right? Just to build the technique of that, where I've always been fascinated by the number of people that want to learn how to squat, bench, or deadlift, that can very easily be put in as part of their warm-up in a circuit to be able to do just the barbell or wall squats or bench presses or deadlifts with bumper plates, and just reinforce that good technical patterns, in the beginning of their warm-up or as a warm-up, because they can build over a month 500 technically efficient repetitions, where it baffles me that the default will be, well, I'm going to squat once a week, and then out of that, there might be 3 warm-up sets and then 2 work sets, 25 reps total, and then they wonder why their technique sucks after 2 years, where if that was kind of built into a warm-up block for that, and it doesn't matter if it's those lifts, it could be the overhead press or any exercise they're trying to build technical efficiency in. It's always baffled me in the strength world that's not seen as every other sport that's ever existed, to be able to build that technical efficiency. Because I think
it's so far away from the load that, especially in the strength world, that they're ultimately going to handle, that it feels useless, right? They're so focused on the absolute load that squatting a bar is what the hell is this going to do for me? What's the benefit here? But it's not about the load in that case, it's about the pattern.
The movement pattern.
Steph Curry, I'm sure, shoots tens of thousands of shots in the off season, just hours and hours. Still, his ability, the reason why he could post up from just inside half court, and it's the same thing as it is when he's just behind the 3-point line, is because the movement is the same. He just has to push a little harder. When he's
So imagine if he only did that for 3 sets of 10 once a week.
Or think about it. Only did it in the games.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How many games are there in a year? 84, 82, 84? You have, if you really want to get good at something, at a skill, you have to find ways to expand beyond competition, because competition will never offer you enough repetitions in competition to do that. I mean, even I use this example a few times with a baseball player. How many ground balls are you actually getting hit? You know, if you're, maybe 4 a game, 5 a game, maybe a few more, but like if you only worked on moving laterally when you got ground balls hit to you in the game, you wouldn't be prepared at all. And you might not even be really good at it. Mm-hmm. So it is funny, because I agree with you. I think that we don't spend enough time doing the things that are going to serve us. And I don't know what it is that gets in the way, but I do think that when it comes to strength, guys in your world can lift some really impressive things, and when they start looking at the bar, it's not as rewarding as it is, to lift a big number, and the discounting of the value of that in terms of leading to your strength is oftentimes overlooked and not enough times utilized. And I think that if they got more repetitions in practice doing these things, as you know, like that skill would improve, the efficiency improves, the strength will improve the efficiency. Now,
with the demographic that you work with, where are the shortfalls that you see there outside of consistency?
That's a good question. I think my particular, so athletics or regular guys?
Regular guys.
I think regular guys program hop a ton. I think they YouTube surf a ton. I think that they commitment to a training goal fluctuates way too much, way too often. And I think they get a little bit of information overload. And sometimes I feel like I contribute to that because I'm a content creator, I think that it's not just about consistency, but it's sort of consistency of toward a goal. And I think that in my realm, the guys in the strength world are really attuned to training in blocks and having a specific purpose and going to a meet and testing out and seeing exactly how they've prepared themselves. Whereas in my world, it's a lot more open-ended. There's not that objective way necessarily to go compete or we give these guys an opportunity here at this event that I have to come and compete each year in an array of athletic events to see how they perform year after year, but they don't really, the general population doesn't get a chance to really put themselves to the test. And because of that, I don't think they have enough of a focus towards preparing towards something. And though I said it's important to show up and be consistent, if you show up and you're consistent with doing inconsistent things, you're just going to get really good at being consistent and consistent. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I see.
Well, I'll see the same thing with lifters that retire.
Yeah.
Right? Because they train with a purpose. Now all of a sudden there's not a purpose. There's an identity crisis. There's all kinds of other things that go on. But when that's all they've ever done, they really don't understand, what to train for. So what are some of the anchors that you'll use with people that you work with to give them something tangible to be able to work for? Because aesthetics is one thing, but it's a really, for me, it's always been a hard thing to really grasp on. So I really don't give a shit what I look like, but it's also, it takes time. Right? And especially if you're dieting down, there's the ugly phase before you start looking good, but that there's too many distractions, to be able to kind of pull away from that. So are there fitness anchors that they gravitate towards more than others?
I think that, first of all, I always say that no matter what lift you do, whether it's one of the big three or whether you're just doing a lat pull down, right? Like your goal should be to continue to maintain your strength in those exercises, if not improve. I think strength is just a metric of function that the longer you can keep it, because let's face it, as we age, we're fighting a losing battle. It's going to get worse and worse. And for those that doubt that and say, well, no, I train, and that's why I stave that off. Like, just go look at the 90-year-old guy and how he walks around. Like, he's not moving as strongly as he was before, even if he trained his whole life. It should be a foremost thought in your mind about how do I maintain my ability to move a weight, even at higher rep ranges, right? It doesn't have to be exclusive to your maxes or your triples. It could be anything in a higher range. But from a standpoint of like overall fitness, I think there's a few things that people should probably be good at and should probably be able to do just as overall measurements of fitness. I think a push-up is a good measurement of your level of fitness. I was asked the question today about it. I think you should be able to do about 40 push-ups unbroken. I think that's a good measure. I think you should be able to do about 10 to 15 pull-ups, you know? And I understand it gets harder as you weigh more weight, but like, that's where I'm giving you the 10 to 15. I still think you should be able to do 10. I think that you should be able to hang from a bar for 2 minutes. You know, there's a mental toughness to that. There's a grip strength measurement to that. There is some literature that talks about the correlation between grip strength and longevity. Actually, there's some interesting thoughts on why that might be, but.
Well, let's go down that rabbit hole because I found that as well. Yeah. You know, and I used to use the grip dynamometer. I can't say the word, but I used to use that frequently from that. And so what have you found with that?
So I definitely think that better grip strength probably increases quality of life. And I think that when they look at these longevity studies, like one of the biggest reasons why they think it actually improves the length of your life is because the ability to grab something while you're falling and to stop your fall can be a lifesaver. Because we know once somebody at a certain age undergoes fractured hip, all shit hits the fan and all hell breaks loose. And a lot of times it doesn't end the way it should. And it's like, how do these things tumble out of control? So I think that that's an important element of that. But more importantly, this is what was brought up recently. I think Peter Tate brought it up, and he said, these are all correlative studies, you know, and he said that there's a correlation between grip strength and longevity, but is it because if your grip strength is good, have you spent your whole life, Dave Tate, working out with weights, gripping bars, holding, you know, like doing things, indicating that you're an active person who's taking your health and fitness seriously, who happens to have a strong grip because you're constantly using your hands to do things that most other people don't. I actually think I agree that that's probably part of the contribution to that. You know, it's not that if you're someone who's out of shape, overweight, aging, and then you decide to pick up one of those little hand squeeze grip things that you're going to just all of a sudden, you know, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to live 10 more years. I don't think that's the way that works, you know? But I think that we do know that grip strength is a good indicator of CNS fatigue. And I think that if you're overtraining, you can see a distinct difference in your grip strength. I think that should be enough evidence and a good enough indicator that having a stronger grip is probably showing you that you're in a better overall state of preparedness, and in doing so, able to do things more easily and hopefully more healthily. So I think that having a strong grip is something that we should probably work on a bit. In addition to what I just said, the stuff that you're getting from just the overall workload of that you're incurring through your overall workouts. The bar hang, we'll test that for sure. You know, the bar hang is a tough exercise, and the longer you can do it, I think the better, the more important the exercise. The shorter you can do it, the more important the exercise becomes. There's people that can jump up on a bar and hold themselves for 30 seconds. I think that's a really bad reflection of your overall level of fitness at the moment. So I like to use it as a simple exercise too. Plus, it has other benefits of decompressing the spine. Anybody that has back issues, I always say, try to hang from a bar. You know, it's a free form of decompression and traction, right? You have to go for PT to have traction. So I think it has other benefits too. Other indicators, like other things I think people should be able to do. I mean, there's a lot of new research and talking about VO2 max, and I'm actually think I might be getting on board with that because I hate conditioning and I hate stressing myself that way. I don't have any problem with stressing myself with weights and the discomfort that I feel from that, but I don't like the stress of cardiovascularly being taxed to the point where I'm gasping. And
I remember doing a Wingate test several times. That's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's awful. It's I'm not built for that. I don't like that, and I have pretty bad knees, so it's like I don't know how I could work this into my future, but like I'm becoming a big believer that that's a very important element of overall health, and probably a great metric of that we should be focusing on. You know, so between the push-ups, the pull-ups, the hangs, the VO2 max, I think that those are pretty important.
How has your own training had to change over the years? Because part of your brand is you have to stay lean, which would suck, by the way. But anyhow, that's part of your brand. But as you've gotten older, and with kids, you know, how has things had to change?
I like to think that it hasn't had to change that much, but that's just not true. Like it's had to, because, man, I mean, we were joking the other night, like, I used to be able to see, I could look at the side of this bottle and right from up close and see everything perfectly.
Yeah.
You couldn't give me something small enough to see. And I mean, within the last year and a half, 2 years, I can't see shit. I go to a restaurant, if it's too dark in the restaurant, I need the light on my phone. Things change, and they change without letting you know that they're going to change. And I've had hamstring strains, torn bicep, doing pretty much the same stuff I've always done. It's just that the body becomes less capable of preventing those things from happening. So the workouts where I used to ignore my warm-up completely, in my 20s, I would show and go all the way. I go up there, one set, halfway through like basically whatever I was going to use, and then the next set using the weight I was going to use, and go. I can't do that anymore. I cannot do that anymore. Like, if I do that, I won't lift the weight I could. It won't feel the same, and I'm gonna essentially, you know, put myself at risk for injury that I don't have to. That's increased the length of the workout for me.
All right, guys, I'm here at EliteFTS. I'm at the compound. Nobody is watching right now, so bear with me. I found some bands that I need really, really bad. I'm gonna throw them in my bag and take them home with me, so don't tell anybody. Bands are absolutely great. If you're looking for the safest way to train to become fast, to become explosive, become strong, safety, 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 safety. Watch some videos about using bands. Why should you buy the EliteFTS bands? I swear. Promise you guys, these bands will last longer than any other bands you will buy anywhere. They're a little more expensive. They're gonna last a heck of a lot longer. EliteFTS.com. Get your bands just like I am. See ya.
Summer's here and so is the heat. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym, it kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link. Are you looking to boost recovery enhance your sex drive and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Merrick Health. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Merrick Health offers a table talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over-the-counter and prescription. Visit merrickhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Merrick Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being.
The other thing is that I've focused more on developing that tension with lighter loads through longer durations. I love when you talk about that, because that's kind of what I think is really like a nice, safe way to continue to do the things that we like to do with less risk of injury. I think I care a little bit more about injury now than I did before, because even as ATHLEAN-X, if I'm on the shelf and I can't make videos, or I can't continue to educate people through the videos we make, then I'm really no good either. So I have to keep an eye towards being able to do what I do. I have to keep an eye towards being able to go play with my kids, and it's become less about the vanity and more about, because I went through that phase too, and want to look good, and more about feeling good at the same time, trying to maintain. The leanness is actually not hard for me, believe it or not. Like, I just admitted I don't do much conditioning, but to me the leanness is completely determined by your nutrition. And whether you're a cold-hearted bastard when it comes to food like I am or not will determine how easy it is to be lean perpetually. I'm not a huge eater. Food isn't one of my main drivers. A lot of people love food. A lot of people love all types of food. I eat every day. I eat over 3,000 calories a day. But it's not like the thing that turns me on, So it's not that hard for me to be locked in. Plus, I love what I eat. I really love what I eat. And it doesn't feel like work to me to eat what I've eaten. As I always tell people, if they want to be lean for a lifetime, you gotta find foods you love eating, and then probably be pretty damn consistent with eating that way. And for some people, that's not the trade. They don't want that trade-off. They don't want to be super lean. Like, to them, it's like, I want to indulge in these things more often than you do, Jeff. And therefore, I'm like, great. Then you still could be 10% body fat. You can still be 12% body. You're going to look awesome. You don't have to be super lean to do that. And I think that's probably the best place for people to be, because then for the majority of people, they're not in any type of deprivation. I am not in deprivation with how I eat. That's why I can sustain it. Is how I like to eat. But if you've brought deprivation into your approach, leanness is going to be, you're not going to keep it. Because we could all do something temporarily to get leaner, but we're not going to be able to keep it that way.
So with, say, the demographic that we had out here, how would you go about helping them to develop their mind-muscle connection?
First of all, I think it's important to be aware of what you're trying to, like the muscle you're actually trying to train. And I know it gets a little bit in the weeds, but do you know what the function of the muscle is? Because if you know what the function is, and this is where I think the anatomy stuff sort of becomes important. If you know what the function of the muscle is, then you can at least try to do, you're following the movement pattern of that muscle. So if you know that the chest is going to allow you to push your arms away from your body, but also cross them, And by crossing them, you're going to get even more intense contraction. When you do that exercise, it's not just about going, I always say from point A to point Z, it's not just about going from here to here. It's about experiencing every letter from A to Z, A, B, C, D, and that means like really trying to forcefully engage that muscle as you go through the exercise. To me, it's about speed of movement and intention and the knowledge of the muscle that you're trying to train. If you know what muscle you're trying to train, you know what the functions are. If you take it slow, you can actually recruit muscle fibers more easily when you do something slowly. It's very hard to contribute muscle fibers to a contraction intentionally when you're just moving very quickly. Yeah. But when you're trying to do it, you can do it right here. If you're doing it here and you really try to squeeze across, you can almost stack the recruitment as you're moving through that exercise slowly, because you can feel it. You can actually make the adaptations on the fly as you're moving through the range of motion. So I think speed is really the best way to do that. And do it on exercises that allow you to do it more easily. Like a compound lift's not going to lend itself to be a real good muscle recruitment from a standpoint of mind muscle connection. But something, a single joint exercise like a curl or a concentration curl type exercise, you're going to be able to do it more easily. And I'm not saying that you even can have to fall in love with those exercises. You can develop the mind muscle connection with those exercises and then go back to performing more of the compound lifts and still have the benefit of being able to recruit.
Do you think it's important for them to actually develop that?
Yes, I do. I think it's difficult on a bench press to perform it properly if you don't have good mind muscle connection with your back. I think that because that's a static hold, and you have to be able to get yourself in that position and feel it, because you don't even the bench press can become more of a survival exercise for people who are just trying to get the weight off of their chest and make sure they don't get crushed. They're not necessarily worrying about how good their rhomboids are contracting or their, but if you've trained that and you've recruited them more effectively through the other elements of your training, that's going to happen more automatically. You're not going to have to worry about that element of it. That's going to be you cue yourself to do it prior to the lift, and then it sort of becomes second nature because you've got more connection with that muscle. It's like if you're going to talk to the muscle, you want it to be able to hear you. And that's essentially what's happening. I can send the signal to that muscle that I want you to do this, and it should respond. If you don't have that mind muscle connection, the muscle is essentially deaf. It's not listening to what you're saying. And now we need to go into an exercise where you might benefit from having them work. They're not gonna hear you. The focus, especially, it's like you're not even the main person in the room that's talking, right? They're listening. They're trying to push the bar off your chest. So the more you can practice, again, like we talked about, like that's a skill. That's another skill, the movement pattern. In this case, it's the recruitment capability of that muscle. The better you are. I shared this on Andrew Huberman's podcast, but I said, like, your ability to create discomfort in a muscle is a good indicator upon flexing it. It's a good indicator of your ability to recruit it. And if you can contract the bicep to the point where you get good discomfort in there, and I even say there's stages of this, right? Like the stages would be how contracted is that muscle? Like if I could just bend my elbow here and supinate and get that, I could do it. In this case, I could flex this bicep and it feels like a cramp. But if that still doesn't do it, and I know that shoulder flexion is part of a bicep contraction, so I raise it a little bit more, which is why we do the bicep from up here, and it gets uncomfortable then, well, at least I know I've got something going on there, right? But ultimately, I'd like to be able to do it down here without having to go all the way into that complete contraction to feel it. So I think you can even grade yourself in terms of what your mind muscle capabilities are with these little tests of actually contracting the muscle. And how far you have to go into the contracted position before you actually feel that discomfort is an indicator of maybe how good you're at. Like, are you an F if you don't feel it at all? Are you an A if you feel it right away? But more importantly, you're like a B plus, a B minus, a C, because you know how much further you have to go.
Yeah, I think that's an important skill to be able to develop to where, I've said before, you should be able to, your goal should be able to contract any muscle. Yeah. Like right now we should be able to contract any muscle from shoulder, tricep, bicep, quads, calves, just by sitting here. Yeah. And if you can do that and you want to be able to train for the rest of your life, as you kind of noted earlier, there's going to be a time, with joint damage or whatever it is, to where you're going to have to slow the tempo down. But if you slow the tempo down, you have to have the ability to contract that muscle very hard to be able to get more out of that lighter weight.
Right.
And if you develop that skill early on, then it's going to be a lot easier to develop than when you're 50 years old and you don't have the neural connections.
People ask all the time, like, what does this exercise work? Like that to me, it's a mind-blowing question. You know, when I do whatever I do, I'm assessing what's working. Like that's how my mind thinks. If I was asked to curl, never was asked to do this before, but like curl your arm up like this, I'm trying to feel what is actually creating the movement. And I'm thinking, oh, that's my bicep. That's this muscle right here that's actually working. I'm doing it. I'm always baffled by how many times people they're doing a push-up. They're like, what is this supposed to work? What is it supposed to work? What are you feeling? Nothing? Like you're pushing yourself off the ground. Are you feeling anything? You know, or they'll do an overhead tricep. You've seen it. These are people who are completely inexperienced with lifting, but like, still, like, what is this supposed to work? Like, where do you feel it? You know? So rather than just moving through the motion, becoming aware of like even just that simple question, what are you feeling when you're doing it? And then if you know what the answer is supposed to be, then you can work towards that. Yeah,
well, you can change the movement too to be able to hit what you want. So if I'll teach people with lat training, you know, that there's a difference between elbows out and elbows in.
Yeah.
You know, one's going to be more upper back, one's going to be more lower lat, and you got to be able to know the difference between the two. Yeah. And then if you're programming, is it all elbows out? Yeah. You know, what's the balance between all this? And we spoke earlier about the upper back. You know, any row movement with your elbows out is going to activate that upper back more if you're thinking and contracting and try to, you know, first let's start with the stretch, right? And if you start with the stretch, what's stretching?
Right, yeah.
Okay, well,
that's going to reverse.
Yeah, that's probably going to be what's going to contract at the top.
Right.
You know, and kind of base it off of that. Yeah. And it's interesting to me the number of people that don't get it. You know, it's just, here's a movement, I'm going to do that movement. And it's like, well, yeah, but if your upper back's the issue, then we can tweak this movement for that specific reason.
The enjoyment of lifting goes up immensely when you start to have just a better understanding of what's happening, because you're in control. And a lot of times people lift completely away from all the stuff we're talking about, the science of this. They lift because they're looking for control in some element of their life. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the guys that get into lifting, I say it all the time, they're fucked up in some way that led them to like want to gain some control over some element of their life. Maybe it was a bad childhood. Maybe it was feeling insecure about how they looked. Maybe they got teased. Control through lifting is enhanced by actually controlling the lift. Mm-hmm. Right? That external control you're trying to gain over your life is controlled by being able to control the lift. You know, it's so rewarding to be able to put effort into something and see a reward for it, whether it's through an increase in strength, an increase in muscle size, compliments people give you. But within that, the control you can actually exert over every repetition, over every set, over every exercise, over learning a new exercise, over getting better at that to me is really where the reward is. And that might be maybe where the bug is, you get bitten by the bug, where it actually becomes part of your lifestyle, because it's almost like it's a journey.
I was asked a question the other day, and it came up when I was talking about that stretch thing by somebody that, when I was asked the question, you know, I kind of gave an answer, but then I pondered it later because I didn't understand the context to which it was being asked at the time, and it was about the stretch position. And the question was, you know, the person couldn't feel their triceps in a stretch position unless it was, say, an overhead French press. And so the question was, what's more important, the stretch position or the lengthened position? And I took that as it's the same thing, but the person can't feel the stretch position, say if it's in a push down or something like that. I can, you know, so I don't know if it's a muscle mass thing or if it's a position type thing. And when they do those studies and they're talking about the stretch position, you know, how is that defined, or is it the same as the lengthened position? Because this messed with my mind for like a half an hour trying to figure this whole thing out. And all I could come up with is they just can't feel that position because their flexibility is great. You know, I don't really know how to define all that, but you get what I'm asking here? Where, because if somebody's in that position and we're talking about a stretch position and they are at that end range, but they don't feel that muscle stretching, then my assumption is the flexibility is not to that point, or just the positioning's not good.
The positioning, you talked about the muscle mass. You know, there's also like mechanoreceptors. So like certain people respond, like can feel stretch more than others because like you're getting a feedback from the mechanoreceptors that this is actually being stretched, or even proprioception works into this too. Like I can close my eyes and I know where my hand is in space. It's a skill even with lifting. Like proprioception sort of works into that too, because you can feel what's going on in your ankles when you're squatting without having to look down. You can feel what's going on in your glutes without having to look back there to see what's going on. So some of us just don't have good capabilities with proprioception, or they just don't have real sensitivity in the mechanoreceptors of those muscles and joints to really feel it as much. So there's variation there too. But I think that can all be improved. Those are all skills that can be improved. A lot of times people will work on, especially going way back and to my sort of cardio rehab days, like people that have strokes. You can learn a lot from them in terms of like what can be improved post-stroke by working on drills, eyes closed, position their hand in a certain state, say mirror that with the other hand, and make it, they'll be like this, when they start. Like you put a position of their arm here, eyes closed, okay, do the same thing on the other side, and do this. They don't even have the ability to feel that. When that's impaired, you're not going to move the same. You're not going to react the same. You're not going to feel muscles that cross those joints the same. You can't, because you obviously not close. This is shortened now, and this is lengthened.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? You practice it. You practice those things. You can improve your proprioception by doing exactly things like that, or by taking yourself through those exercises. You could do some of those exercises that you're talking about and do them eyes closed. Tell them to do them eyes closed. See if that improves it. Because now when they don't have the visual feedback, they're forced to feel more in here. We rely oftentimes on our eyes. One of the reasons why closing your eyes when you balance or when you do a balance test is so hard is because you're looking at what's in front of you. And when you start to see your world tilt, even if you didn't know you were falling, you have a good sense that something's happening. Like I'm starting to fall. So you correct yourself because you see what's happening with your eyes. When you close your eyes, it forces the joints and the proprioceptive capabilities that you have to feel, oh wait, my joint is actually starting to cave out. I'm actually I can feel myself tilting in space. I'm not looking at it with my eyes. So I do think that there's another option to like take some of those lifts that they're struggling with feeling, tell them to close their eyes and feel it and see if they can increase their capability. Because it's going to turn it on more.
Yeah.
And when you first start doing it, it might not improve very much because they don't have the skill. But as they improve that skill, they should be able to, feel it more.
You just brought back a memory where when I was in college, I had training phases that I would go through that were blindfolded just to kind of work on the tactile feedback of knowing where my body where the tension should be in a squat during the different phases of all that. Yeah. Just have
on the squat, or did you do other things?
For my main lifts, for all the main lifts, because and this is in gear as well, so the gear provides that feedback as well. But I wanted to know exactly where the tension needed to be at all phases of that lift to be able to know, am I in the right spot? And if I'm not in the right spot, what has to be corrected to stay in that right spot? And there was mirrors in the gym, right? So the way the squat racks were set up, it was almost impossible to face away, so it was just kind of by default. Like I didn't want to see myself because I knew that was creating feedback I didn't want to have. And so I would blindfold, for some of those top sets. And the side benefit of that was I started to develop, here's what this needs to feel like through that lift in each specific position. And It helped. It definitely helped, but it also helped me to better utilize the gear I was using at the time.
Yeah.
Because that, when you take that off, all that's gone,
Yeah,
right? Because that's providing compression and kind of know where all that's in there as well. But it's still the mastery of that's a whole different skill with that.
Well,
I completely forgot about
and neurologically, it's a completely different concept too, right? It's a completely different ability than just force production. So, yeah, I mean, I these are the kind of things that I get fascinated about, because I think that they all contribute to the big picture and to be able to perform at a higher level. But there's some of the things that people don't really focus on or care about or ever want to learn about, really. But that's when I say put the science behind the strength, and I mean, like, care about what you do. Like, there's a science here. It doesn't mean go read and regurgitate every study. It means apply the science to yourself. If you're in a position like you are, where you can train other people, you got a lot of application of science to other people, and learn from that. And also, when I say train like an athlete, train like an athlete. An athlete is getting paid to do what they do for a living. They better be pretty damn serious about what they do if they want to perform at the highest level. And those guys do, and they do, and they focus on doing the right things. Care more about what you're doing if you can. Maybe your time doesn't allow you to do it, but at least care about what you do and the time that you have to be able to get the most out of it. And when you do, I mean, it becomes more enjoyable. And as I said, I think that's when you get bitten by that bug, because there's a level of enjoyment that, like, let's put it this way. If I just gave you the Cliff Notes, would you enjoy the book as much as you would if you actually read the book?
No.
Right? Like, read the book, because when you read the book on lifting, you actually implement these things at the nuanced level. I just think that the not only are the results better, but the enjoyment is better along the way, and you become you actually might do it for a living like you and I have, or you just really love it, and you really enjoy it, and you're always constantly trying to learn more, because we're fascinated by it. I'm not saying everybody has to be fascinated by it, but if they can be more fascinated than they are today, they're going to be more likely to continue doing it consistently, because there's more rewards along the way.
Were there any topics you wanted to discuss I didn't bring up?
No, I mean, I want to reiterate again my thanks for you for coming out here doing this. You and I have spoken off camera about our families, the challenges of raising kids, and it's not that easy for me to get out and go do things. And the fact that you were willing to come here and do it is extremely appreciated, and it made it a hell of a lot easier for me to do it. And this is something I really wanted to do. So to be able to come here and do this with you is great. And I just want to thank you again.
No, thank you. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think anything we can do in the industry to make people more interested in fitness and strength, and overall improving our life through something that we just sort of enjoy as a lifelong, passion of ours, is the right step for what we're doing. If we could, in those, sometimes I think we might get off track with some of these functional fitness and science, but the intention is usually in the right place. And our job is just to try to help people, parse through it and get the stuff that's actually most valuable. And if I've been able to do that at all through my YouTube channel, that I've done what I've wanted to do, and certainly not, intending on stopping doing it anytime soon. So I want to continue to get better and do more of it. But I think it's just great to be able to have platforms like we do, to be able to share that information, and hopefully people benefit.
What's the best way for people to find you?
YouTube, ATHLEAN-X on YouTube, or ATHLEAN-X.com, probably the two easiest places. I'm on Instagram also there too. I post different types of content on Instagram than I do on YouTube, so it is a little bit of a different look and feel, but it's all sort of wrapped around the same concepts that we talked about. So,
well, I want to thank you for the podcast. Thank you for having me out.
Thank you.
This was a great time.
Yeah,
I don't have the opportunity to work with this demographic.
Yeah,
as frequently.
You wowed them, man. They're all talking about it after they left. So you did your thing.
Okay. All right. With that said, we're done, guys.
Thanks.
All right, guys, thanks for watching the video to the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and click here, 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 or here for more videos.